point.
Yeah.
And you know the MS BFB, he has some concern about this.
Really, no, it works well if you use the client. You can use the client machine for distribution point. So far as you're not going to use it for anything else apart from distribution point. So um, you can use a client for distribution point in config manager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
So we are going with this plan. Let's see.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but then one caveat, one thing to always to also do, especially when you're using that kind of a model, is to, if possible, enable branch cache, if possible.
Yep.
Yeah, because it will save. Yeah, because it will save you a lot. So you have to enable branch cache on your distribution point, and then
Okay.
enable branch cache by group policy on your client. So that
Uh-huh.
way,
Okay.
yeah. But we'll talk about that when we get there. We'll talk about that when we get there. So it's something
Okay.
that can save like bandwidth, because what happens is your machine can download the application or deployment once from the distribution point, and then once it's downloaded from the distribution point, machines on the same network can actually share the data between one another. So as long as they're on the same subnet, if I need the download, I ask from other machines on the same subnet. So anybody that's previously downloaded it, I can download it from them. So it's kind of like peer-to-peer, but it only works within a single subnet. You can use it for, so if you have 10.1.1/24, 10.1.2/24, so you can't use it across subnet. So it only works within a subnet, but we'll talk about that one when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah, nice one. Okay, so let's do some revision from last week first of all. So I'll share my screen again, and let's see how much we've been studying our config manager. Anyone planning to do the config manager exam at all?
Not me. Not yet.
Oh, are you planning to do the config manager exam, Frank?
I'm sorry?
Are you planning to do the config manager exam?
Yeah, probably. I'm willing to take any exam as long as it gets me a couple bucks.
Yeah. 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 It's a nice one. Okay.
I really want the MCSA one first, though.
Yeah. So hold on. Have you registered for your 7410 or 7411 exam?
No, I'm taking the 7410 with you tomorrow as
Ah,
well.
okay. Yeah.
I'm really lost to where to start with it. I mean, I got a lab and stuff, and I kind of know what I'm doing, but I need some sort of track to follow.
Yeah.
With my MCA.
Yeah, that's a really good that's a really good reason. Because I tell you, one of the main reasons for or one of the reasons why we started like the whole community and the whole Hangout is because it's one of the things in IT. I'm not sure if Abdul agrees or anything. Like one of the things in IT these days is there's like lots of information, which is not bad. But one of the difficulty of that is, okay, Frank comes and Frank says, I want to study for MCSA. And I'm like, yeah, Frank, I got this textbook, mastering, Microsoft Windows Server 2012. It's awesome. Frank is like, yep, okay, I'm going to go for that textbook. Then Frank is talking to Abdul, and Abdul is like, oh, no, it's CBT Nuggets. That's the thing, man. It's CBT Nuggets is the thing. And Frank is like, okay, yeah, it's CBT Nuggets. Then someone's like, no, it's Pluralsight, man. Pluralsight is the thing. Then you go to some other website, and the website is like, man, forget all these textbooks. Forget all these things. You don't need any textbooks. You don't need any videos. All you need are TechNet articles. And you're like, okay, hold on. I just need, like what you say, I just need a track to follow. I just need something, which is actually advisable. It doesn't matter any method you want to use. Videos, textbook, Microsoft textbook, third-party textbook, O'Reilly textbook, anything, CBT Nugget, Pluralsight. As long as you pick one of them, just stay with that. So which is like one of the reasons why the Hangout is kind of like, okay, we pick 2 topics in a week, right? So you have 2 topics in a week. Whatever method you're using, whether you're using a textbook, go take that textbook, go read those 2 topics. Whether it's videos, go take videos on those 2 topics and watch them, Whether it's TechNet articles, get TechNet articles and read them for those 2 videos. Then let's come together once a week to discuss those 2 topics. Then we go to the other 2 topics next week. And then you can go use whatever method you want to learn those 2 topics. Then let's come together and share knowledge. It's kind of like that kind of model, because the overloading of information in IT can be difficult at times. I know I had that when I was studying for Cisco CCNA. It was crazy.
Overloaded.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we can remember a bit of from what we did last week. So here's the scenario that we have for this week. So we have let's say we have one headquarter site and we have 4 branch sites. So in total, across our entire business, we have 500,000 users. That's globally. On this site, which is our headquarter site, we have 300,000 users in one single place. Yeah. So let's say we are like that. So let's say we've got 80,000 here. 120,000 here. So this one, you definitely probably won't be dealing with this in the real world. But the whole goal is to try to see if we understand the concept now of basic config manager design. So that's the whole goal of why we're doing this. So you probably won't see this in the real world. Okay, so this is actually like 500,000 already. So we have to reduce this. So let's say 80,000 here, 20,000 here. So got 400,000 now, and we got 50,000 in each of these locations. Okay, got 50,000 here. So who wants to go first? What design would you recommend for this business? Who wants to go for that first? What would be your recommendation? What would you recommend? So you've been called in as a consultant, contractor. You've got 500,000 users globally, 300,000 users in the headquarters site, 80,000 users, yeah, 20,000, 50,000, 50,000. What type of design would you recommend and why? So the main reason for this, again, remember, you won't face this in the real world, but it's to help us, call to mind or call to our memory the basic principles of designing a config manager infrastructure. So who wants to go first? Abdul, you want to go first?
Okay. Okay. Are those this is our different sites, huh?
Yeah. So these boxes are different locations. So globally, they all add up to 500,000, but these are different locations. So we have 300,000 users in this location. And yeah. So what would be your recommendation and why?
I think we have to make a CAS server.
Okay. CAS server. Where would you put the CAS server? So there's no single answer to this, So just use basic config manager design principles and make your own design from this. So yeah, you want to put CAS server where? Yeah? Or where? So Abdul, so where do you want to put the CAS server? I can't hear Abdul anymore. Frank, you want to assist Abdul? How would you design this for them? Config manager infrastructure.
Yeah, man, I'm still new.
Okay. So Abdul, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure, but it depends on, okay, as we talked last week, the CAS server will be handling many primary sites.
Yep. So that's a good one. So how many primary sites can we have under a CAS?
At least 2.
Yep, at least 2. But how many can we have maximum?
Primary site,
Yep.
25, I think.
Yep, good one.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And I think, if we have, management point, every management point will handle 150 users.
Yeah, so no, we're not even looking at management points, just the site. So let's stay at the site level. So how would you design the site hierarchy in this? So you said we'll have a cast. So what would you put the cast? How many primary sites would you have? How many secondary sites would you have? Where would you put the secondary site? So now I have to make it quick. Let's do it this way. So remember that last week we mentioned a cast can support up to a maximum of how many users? So if you remember, before, I think it can support up to a maximum of 400,000 users, is it?
Yeah.
So I think it has increased from there. I think it's now 650,000, but we'll get there. 650,000. But assuming it's still the old version that supports 400,000 users, that instantly tells you you have to have a minimum of 2 cast servers, right? Because under a cast hierarchy, under a central admin server hierarchy, you can only have up to 400,000 users. So again, let's bring up configuration manager cast maximum. So we'll see. Yep, here we go. So those are the principles that we use. So if this one, if it's the value is still 400,000, it automatically means we'll need at least 2 cast servers to support 500,000 users. So if they say a primary site can support, in the latest version, I think a primary site can support up to 150,000 users. So if that is standard devices, but let's assume everything is standard devices. Let's assume it's not like a mixture of, Linux and Macs and Android and Windows Phone and stuff like that. Let's say just pure normal Microsoft Windows laptops and desktops. So a primary site can support up to 150,000. So that shows you here that you have to have at least 2 primary sites in this location if you're going to be able to support them. But for scalability, you probably want to have more than 2 primary sites, because otherwise you already reach your maximum already. So you probably want to have 3 primary sites in this location. So in this location here, for that reason alone, you probably want to have a primary site here. So this is not the only answer. This is just giving like the kind of thinking that you use. So let's bring this documentation back, where it talks about the maximum that we can have. So you should talk about the maximum number of users somewhere. So maybe in another, okay, maybe supported configurations. Yeah, supported configuration. So maybe this one. Okay, yeah, this one. Okay, clients by hierarchy. So here we go. So let's make this one bigger. So if I scroll down here, so see on a cast site, on a central admin site, clients per site. Now on a primary site, on a standalone primary site, you can have up to 150,000 client group 1, which is like just your client group 1 just simply means your standard devices. So that means your normal Windows devices. So you can have up to 150,000 of them. Then if you go down here, so you can have up to 225,000. That's for the latest version of Config Manager. Now, for a central admin site with SQL database, data center, or enterprise, you can have up to 400,000 users in 2012 auto. But if you're having the latest version, which is 2012 Service Pack 2, you can have up to 600,000 users. So because we'll be running the latest version, that means we only need a single cast. But assuming you're running this version, you need to have more than one CAS if you're going to be supporting 500,000 users. And you have to make sure that your CAS is running SQL Data Center or SQL Enterprise. You can't be running SQL Standard and support 400,000 users or 600,000 users for that. So that means I'll probably put a primary site here. Yeah, we can probably get away with a secondary site, but how many clients can a secondary site support? How many clients can a secondary site support? I think if I get it right, I think it can support up to 10,000 before, but maybe it's changed now. So I think under a secondary site or maybe central admin site. Okay, let's go secondary site, clients per site, secondary site. Okay, yeah. So you can support up to 10,000 clients. So that shows you that you can't just have a single secondary site here if you want. You have to have two secondary sites there. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably just put a primary site here, a primary site there, and a primary site there. Because rather than having two secondary sites here, just have primary sites in all the locations, three primary sites here, and then you have, because the latest version of CAS supports 600,000, not 650,000. So 600,000, you can have a single CAS managing all these different primary sites that you have. So I'm not sure if that is clear at all. Is that clear at all? Frank and Abdul, is there or any questions regarding that? Is that clear? You're muted. Yeah. Is that clear at all?
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, you're good. I got you.
Yeah. What about Abdul? You've got any questions?
Yeah, you mentioned in in the 300,000 box.
Yeah.
To put three primary sites there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So okay.
And the
That's
reason
clear.
for that is because under a primary site, how many users can you support? Remember?
150.
Yeah, exactly. So you can go up to 150,000. So if you go up to 150,000, that means you won't be able to support 300,000 users for one primary site. So you have to have multiple primary sites. So that shows you. I'm assuming we have 700,000 clients globally. That instantly tells us we cannot have a single CAS server, because a single CAS server can only go as far as 600,000 globally. So it can only go as far as, where's the information? Yeah. So a CAS server can only go as far as 600,000. So that means if you have maximum of 600,000, you have 700,000 users, you have to have two CAS. If your primary site, so whenever you're designing your infrastructure, keep this in mind. Keep in mind that, okay, a secondary site can support 10,000 users. So if I've got a location where there's more than 10,000 users to support, or 10,000 clients to support, 10,000 endpoint support, well, I'm not going to be able to use a single secondary site. I probably need to put a primary site for that location. So all these, so I'll say we get familiar with this documentation. So let me send this documentation in the chat window. So it's a really good one to be familiar with. Hello, Demola.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm fine. Oh, nice to join you guys.
No problems, man. So yeah, so we got Frank and Abdul online also. So okay, so let's move on a bit now from this. So one of the main things that we said we're going to discuss this week is PowerShell and Configuration Manager, just the basics of PowerShell and Configuration Manager. And what I'll do is I'll bring up my server now. I'll bring up my server, and then let's do some bit of tasks. So let's go HTTPS 192.168.1.103, I think, 105. Okay, here we go. So I'll just switch it on, then we'll move on from there. So what I'll do is I'll start the machine. I'll probably give like TeamViewer access, so then we can do a bit of tasks on this one. You may hear some noise behind me now. Okay, yeah, PowerShell and Configuration Manager. So here's the first thing to realize with PowerShell and Configuration Manager. So usually in your infrastructure, you have your site server here. You have your administrators sitting down on their machines, and they need to be able to administer this Configuration Manager infrastructure, which is the same thing that we do with any service, Active Directory, anything, Exchange. So they can actually log into this server and bring up the Configuration Manager console and bring up Configuration Manager PowerShell console, sorry, PowerShell access to do whatever they want to do, or they can do that right from within their machine. So the question is, for them to get access to PowerShell to be able to administer this machine, what needs to be in place? So I want to be able to administer this machine, I don't want to log into this machine and then be able to administer my config manager infrastructure. I want to sit down from my cubicle here, and I want to be able to bring up PowerShell and administer my config manager hierarchy from here. So how do I get that working? That's the first thing. So who wants to go for that? So have you ever used this, like Abdul or Frank? Have you ever used this in your infrastructure, where from your client machine you're administering your config manager machine using
Yeah.
PowerShell? So what needs to be in place for me to be able to use PowerShell to control, this machine from my machine?
Well, you're talking about the ability to contact the remote machine, or the commandlets that you need to get to contact.
Yeah. So the commandlets to manage my configuration manager machine. So this is my config manager machine on my site server.
So you're going to need to import the module for config manager.
Excellent, excellent. So we need to import the module form. But where do we get the module form to import?
Can't you just tell it to go get it now?
Where will it get it from?
I think you could just, chocolatey or something like that? You just tell it to go get it?
You mean from the command line?
Yeah, right inside PowerShell.
So, but I'm on my machine now. Okay, so if I go to my machine now, let's bring up my machine. One is administrator. So I'm on my machine now. There's nothing that has to do with configuration manager installed on this machine, apart from, let's say, the configuration manager client. Nothing else is installed on it. So this machine has no idea. So if I do get module, yeah, so get me all the available modules. You're not going to see any configuration manager module listed here. Even though I have the remote server administration tools installed, you're not going to see any configuration manager module here. So I have to get it from somewhere first. So I have to put the module on my machine. So yeah, there's nothing configuration manager related at all. So these are all the modules available on my machine. So where do I get the configuration manager module from? Because that's the thing you have to do as an administrator. On your machine here, you want to be able to administer this. You're right in saying we have to import the module, but we have to get it from somewhere. Where? So Abdul, you wanna chip in? Where do we get the module from?
I think I'm not sure, but I think you can download this module from Microsoft website and save it to your local to your client machine.
Excellent.
There is one folder for PowerShell module, so you can save it there.
Excellent. So that's the answer you download from Microsoft. So again, this is assuming when you installed your site server, remember that it's going to install the console and install all the modules. So everything will be installed on this one. So if you log into your site server, everything will be there. But we're talking about from your client machine, because actually that's a security risk for you to be logging into this machine. But that's something for another time. The reason why, does anyone know why it's a security risk for you to keep logging into this machine and trying to administer your configuration manager from this machine? Why is that a security risk? But that's for another subject. Basically, it's a security risk because when you log into this machine, you have your token on this machine. Yeah? It's because you get a Kerberos ticket, you have a token on this machine. If an attacker can take control of this machine, they can hijack that token. So the less people we can get logging into this server, the less risky the less risk that this server has. So we want to get less people logging into this server. Rather, we want to get them using remote management tools to manage this server. But in the modern world, remote management tools is moving away little by little from the console and moving to PowerShell. So that's why we're talking about this. Abdul, you wanted to say something?
I think you're talking about WinRM.
WinRM? No, not at all. So, yeah. So this is just from your machine. You want to, so you're managing your configuration manager infrastructure. Again, remember, this is not talking about managing anything else. It's talking about your configuration manager infrastructure. But in the meantime, let's bring up this infrastructure. So let me bring up got the SCCM infrastructure here. I've got my domain controller here. So what I'll do is I'll bring up this domain controller. So this domain controller, it's a pure server core machine. It's got no GUI on it at all. And I'll need to log on. And this is my SCCM infrastructure. So my SCCM server. So if I want to manage my config manager infrastructure, from this machine, it's easy. Using PowerShell, I bring up my configuration manager console. I click here, I go connect via Windows PowerShell, and that will connect me to my configuration manager, PowerShell console. So from here, I can get and it will list all the configuration manager commandlets for me that I can see. But this machine, let's say this is your user's machine. This machine here. Let's say this is your user's machine. If they go on their machine and they do get module configuration manager, nothing will come up because there's nothing with configuration manager on this machine. So which means we need to put configuration manager on this machine first before we can do anything. Now there's one method we can use. We can actually just go enter PS session to connect remotely to our config manager. And if I go LB SCCM1, so I can actually connect to my configuration manager server directly from this machine, and I'm on this server. And once I'm on this server, if I do get module configuration manager, I get nothing. If I do get CM site, which is a config manager commandlet, like I don't even know what the name of this commandlet is. So even though I'm connecting, so this is kind of like the PowerShell version of remote desktop. So I'm connecting to this machine remotely using PowerShell. I still cannot administer my configuration infrastructure using PowerShell. So I have to do what Frank said, which I have to import the module first. Import the module, and the module in this case is saved inside see, I think your program files, and I think of under configuration manager. Oh, sorry, it's called Microsoft Configuration Manager. Yep, there we go. And I think there's a folder called bin. Yep. And on the bin, is it that one? Okay. Bin. Or let's just go actually. Let's just go. Show me everything under this. So maybe not under this folder. let's go get where the location is. So let's go C drive, Microsoft Configuration Manager, bin. It's not under here, so probably let's see if it's under here. Not under here, so maybe under program files x86 actually. Program files x86, configuration manager, under admin console, under bin. Okay, yeah, I think it's under this location. And then, yeah, there we go, configuration manager. So even though I'm connected remotely to my configuration manager server, I still can admin using PowerShell until I actually go from this machine and I go import Microsoft Configuration Manager admin console bin and configuration manager. Yeah, so I have to import that first. So after importing that, if I still go and do get cm site, I still get an error message saying, sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. Get cm site. What in the world is that? So does anyone know the reason why, even though I've imported the module? So I go get module. Yeah, because I'm connecting remotely. So even though I have imported the module, I still can't run this command. Does anyone know why? What's the reason why? Frank, you need to unmute yourself.
You imported it on the other machine, right?
So I'm on the other machine, but I'm connecting into my config manager server here.
Right. So you're trying to put the commandlets on your local machine, but you just put them on your remote machine.
No, so I'm doing this. So on my local machine,
Oh, okay.
doesn't have config manager at all. So
Sorry,
what I've done is I've kind of like using remote desktop. So using PowerShell enter PS session, I've connected to my remote machine. So now I'm connected to my remote machine. I try to run the commandlet. It says this commandlet is not available. So I imported it into my session on the remote machine. So now I've imported it, but still I can't run this commandlet. So what else do I need to do? So this one will get PS drive. And the reason for that is because we need to, it's not only okay when we're working with config manager for us to import the module, we have to make sure that we be on the right PS drive also. Kind of like we're under the right directory to run that. Abdul, any questions regarding this or Frank?
No, I'm good.
Oh, how about Abdul? You got anything?
Okay. You have to be on the right PS drive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is,
Okay.
the PS drive, I can't see it from here. But let's do this. So if I go back to my config manager infrastructure, and if I bring up just normal PowerShell on this infrastructure, if I do get CM site, I get an error message saying, again, I don't understand what this commandlet is. So if I import the config manager module for import module configuration manager, you probably won't find it. So I have to go import module and go directly to this part. and go, yep, and go enter. Now I've imported the configuration manager module. If I go get module now, you can see my configuration manager module already imported. Okay, but if I still go get CM site, still is telling me, sorry, no, you still can't run this command. And the reason he gave, he said this command cannot be run from the current drive. To run this command, you must first connect to a configuration manager's drive. So let me make this bigger. Sorry, so if I go, let's make this bigger. Yeah, so it says, sorry, you still can't run this command from this drive. He said to run this command, you must first connect to a configuration manager drive. So which is why, which why many people, because most people just go, yeah, they just go click here, go connect via Windows PowerShell. Well, what it's actually doing is all the tags that we're doing here, it's doing all that in the background. But again, remember, if you're going to be like a secure admin that you don't want to be connecting to your servers to administer it, you want to be able to connect from your machine to administer your server. If you're going to be doing that using PowerShell, you can't just go click on here and go connect using PowerShell. It does all that for you in the background, but you must be able to do that from yourself, from your own PowerShell command prompt, which is exactly what we'll do here. So it says, okay, you've loaded the module, but you still need to be on the right drive. So if I go get PS drive and look at this, if I do get PS drive, show me all the available PowerShell drives. I see this drive here called UK1, and it says provider is CM site. Okay, so I can go CD UK1 now. And after going CD UK1, I can go get CM site, and all of a sudden, I can run the commandlet now. Because I've not only loaded the module, now I'm on the right site. So the question again comes back to where we started from, is that if you're working remotely, how do you do all this remotely? You know, now I'm doing this on the configuration manager server, but how do I do all this remotely? Here's the short answer to that. If I go the short answer to that is that the first thing that I need to do on this machine, if I want to be able to administer my config manager infrastructure, is I have to install the config manager console on this machine. So that's the very first thing I need to do. I need the console to be installed on this machine. So the reason for that is, remember that even after I imported, so if I go download the module, let me go back. I can go bring up this one and go. So let's bring this one and say configuration manager 2012 R2 PowerShell. Yeah, so I can download the commandlet from here. So I can download the commandlet, the commandlet library, install it on my machine, and still I won't be able to do anything. So if I go, hopefully downloads, because sometimes Microsoft's website wants you to use Edge or Internet Explorer before they download, unfortunately. Yeah, so I'll just bring up Edge and just use Edge. Just want to download the single file. Okay, so let me go to my downloads folder and get the file that I just downloaded. Now, if I transfer that file to this machine, So I have my configuration manager 2012 PowerShell commandlet, and I install it on this machine. Yeah, so look at this. It says System Center Configuration Manager commandlet library requires an existing installation of the System Center 2012 Configuration Manager Administrator console. So that's the first thing I need to do. Is before I start installing the commandlet library, I need to install the console. And thankfully, the console comes with your config manager installation. So I can actually just browse to my SCCM website, or to my SCCM server, and I'll find the configuration manager console under the tools folder of the installation path. So you see your console setup here. So I need to install my console. So I just double click on this and run this. So I want my site server name. So here's the important thing is that it's asking me for my site server name and all this information. All this information I'm going to be using to set up the console is what your PowerShell session will be using whenever you now want to start using it later. Because remember, when I went and did get PS drive, all of a sudden it found your config manager drive automatically. It found it automatically because whenever you install the console registers has some registry keys that it registers that config manager that PowerShell now uses to find the PS drive that you're on. I'm not sure if that is clear at all or if that's confusing. Let me enter my site's name, LB SSCM1. Okay. So any questions so far regarding what we're talking about, Abdul and Frank? Any question at all, Abdul? Is it making sense or is it confusing?
No, it's clear. I think we have to install the console first and install the module for SCCM to manage it from my client machine.
Yes. So say, okay, yep. So look at this. It starts the configuration manager console after you close setup wizard. Okay, let me click here. Okay. But I'll show you the significance of that. Because if I click don't start it and I just go and try to run the PowerShell commandlet again, it won't work. Because when you actually start the console for the first time, it registers some registry key. I'll show you those registry key, where those registry keys are. So it has some registry keys that it registers. So if I go connect to OBS CCM1, and we'll get to this one. So if I go regedit, if I go under the current user software, that'll be under Microsoft config manager 10 under admin UI. Yeah, so you see all this information. You see it's not registered the site code, it's not registered the site name. As long as all this information don't exist in this registry key, I won't be able to use my config manager PowerShell commandlets. So that is why the significance of installing the console and register the console, that's the significance there. Because if I go here and I see on the bin, I've got my configuration manager PowerShell module here now. So if I go import module, so now I'm on a remote machine here, right? So I'm not on my config manager machine. So import module. configuration manager. Yeah. Okay. So let me import that module. So I've got that module imported now. So I've got my configuration manager module imported. Again, if I try to run any of the commandlet, it's not going to run because it says, hey, you need to be in a particular drive. But in this case, if I do get PS drive, I'm expecting to see my CM site, right? Like I did on the configuration manager server, but I can't see it on this one. Why? Because the information has not yet been registered in this site code. So when you run your configuration manager client on this machine, it actually you have to run it the first time and then get it to register all those information in the registry key before you'll be able to connect using PowerShell remotely. So I think one of the reasons why this one may not be working may be due to version number. That's my guess. Or maybe it's not due to permission. It's probably due to version number, but it's going to eventually work. By the way, this is a good way to even learn some troubleshooting. Let's learn some troubleshooting now. So let me bring up my console, configuration manager console. If I want to troubleshoot connection, so people are calling and saying, hey, I can't connect to the configuration manager infrastructure using the console. How do you troubleshoot that? Frank, what do you think? How do I troubleshoot this situation? I want to find out why. What's going on?
I start pinging.
Pinging. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So ping LB SCCM1, that's the name of the server. Saying, yeah, I can ping SCCM1, but still, if I go here and say connect to site and select LB SCCM1, yeah, I think I know the reason why.
Do you have permission?
What?
You have permission?
Yeah, I have permission.
Okay.
But I think the mistake I've made is I've entered this one wrongly. So I'm using my external domain name, but I actually have a subdomain internally called internal. So if I go connect to that, yeah, there we go. So that makes sense now. So if you go back to this key and let's refresh it, if possible to refresh F5. Yeah, there we go. Can you see now? Because now that we've run it for the first time, now we have all these registrations in the registry key. Now, if I go back to config manager and do get PS drive, or let me see, is the module loaded already? And then if I go, let's go back and then go get PS drive. So what should happen is I should see my configure. Let's do cd ek1. It probably won't work, but this is another thing that we must note. Okay, 1 minute. If I go PowerShell x86, and now I'll explain this one in a moment when as administrator. Get PS drive. And let's make this bigger. Font. Again, just import module. Yep, got configuration manager now. So let's, yeah, here we go. So now I do get PS drive. You can see that I've got this drive now automatically. And the reason why it's able to populate this is because I've installed the console and I've run the console for the first time, which has registered all this information in the registry. And the other thing that I just saw now is that you actually have to be using PowerShell x86. But I think that doesn't apply to the latest version, because I know that at work I use my normal PowerShell x64 and it works. So I think if you're using just config manager, how-to, not service pack 1 or service pack 2, I think you need to be using PowerShell x86. But I think after service pack 1 and service pack 2, you can use PowerShell x64. So that's basically the whole way. So now I can go cd UK1, which is my PS drive for config manager, registered automatically because I've installed the console and ran it for the first time. Now I can do get CM site, and there we go. And then from here on, I can basically I can basically administer my configuration manager infrastructure without having to log into the server from PowerShell from my remote machine here. So is that clear? Is that clear at all? Is that clear, Frank?
Yeah, we're good, man.
Yeah. Over, Abdul, is it clear at all?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, because that's really, I know that's like really confusing to like a lot of people, because most people just go straight to the server, and then when you go straight to the server, you just select the option. You actually don't know what's happening in the background. You don't know that you have to have the console running. So when most people go to their machine and they try to run PowerShell commandlet, and they're like, okay, hold on, why is it not working? I've imported the module, why is it not working? They have no idea that they have to be on a particular drive. And they have no idea that you won't be able to get access to that drive except you have the console installed, and except you've run it for the first time and allowed it to register all these registry keys that config manager can then use to present you with the drive. So yeah, now that we've beaten that horse to death, let's move on a bit to see what other methods or what other things that we use to administer config manager. Oh, by the way, when I talked about like whenever you want to troubleshoot connecting to config manager, does anyone know the log to look for? So which log will you look for? If I want to check, I really want to troubleshoot access. So people are like, I've got access to this machine. I still don't know why I can't connect to my config manager infrastructure. What do you use to troubleshoot that? What logs do you look at? So under your server, actually, I'll just bring up another one. Abdul or Frank, you want to go for that? Sorry.
I gotta see if you could scroll down.
Yeah, I can. So I'll bring that. So let's scroll down.
It's somewhere CM something. One of those in there.
CM.
Yeah, CCM, that one.
CCM. So let's see CCM. Let's see if CCM's got anything. So let's see. Abdul, what about you? What do you think? I think Abdul will get this because Abdul made mention to this last week during the Hangout.
Okay. You mean the logs file for which installation?
And for me to know, if I want to troubleshoot, so people, let's say your service desk are complaining that we're trying to connect to the config manager infrastructure using the config manager console, but it's not working. So how do you troubleshoot that? But we're getting, so you're like, hold on, you have the permissions. So how come you're not able to log in? So which log do you look at that will show you what the problem is?
I'm not sure.
I know you know it because you mentioned it last week. Remember that whenever you have a machine here, you have this machine here, you're connecting using config manager console. Remember that you're not just connecting to the site server, you're actually connecting to the database on this site server using your config manager console. And what's the component that does the access between your config manager console and your database? What's the component that does the access?
SMS provider.
Exactly. That's why, because you mentioned that last week. So it's called SMS provider. So that's actually, so whenever you're connecting using config manager console, you're actually, this component called the SMS provider is actually the one taking all this connection and transferring it to your database in the backend. So this is your database in the backend. And what you can do is you can look at your SMS provider log to see information. So if I go back here and I go SMS provider, SMS, yeah, there we go. SMS provider log. and it will tell me what's going on with the connection. So if I scroll down, so you can see the administrator connected using this one. So you can see all the information here. So that's in the SMS provider log, because the SMS provider is the one taking all those connections and passing it on to the database. So whenever you're troubleshooting that, because I had one issue this week where the service desk guy was running a lower version of the config manager console. So it has all the permissions, everything is right. The server is reachable, there's nothing blocking firewall, it's got all the right permissions, but still trying to connect and failing. And then looking through the SMS provider log, you can actually see an error message that says the user is trying to connect using a lower version. So we have to update their version to the latest version. So that's just by the way. So let's move forward apart from this one. We've talked about PowerShell config manager, how you connect to it. So the next one I want to talk about, I think, is the config manager console itself. So really, there's really nothing to talk about. We're already used to the config manager console. I know in this module, Microsoft did a lot of effort to be telling us there's the preview pane, but we're config manager admin, so I don't think we need to be, told, the software library, that's where you create your software. Monitoring is where you do monitoring. Administering is where you do administering. So I think we'll just keep configuration manager part. So let's go to the other part, which is another interesting part. Troubleshooting. So all these are just basics, foundation, laying the foundation for some things that we'll be discussing in more details later. So troubleshooting configuration manager. There are different things you can look at when you're troubleshooting configuration manager infrastructure. So what are the things that, if you want to troubleshoot a configuration manager infrastructure, what is available to you within configuration manager to troubleshoot itself? So Abdul, what's available to you? We just saw one now. So how do you troubleshoot configuration manager infrastructure?
I will check the logs file for
Excellent.
configuration manager.
Log messages. Anything apart from log messages? So log messages are really important ones. So anything apart from log messages? Let's just put it this way. We have log messages. We have something called status messages. And maybe monitoring. So all these are different. All these are completely different. So let's start with what's the difference between log messages and status messages. So in configuration manager, your configuration manager infrastructure, you have your server. So actually on those server, you have different components. And those different components, they perform different tasks. Just like the one that we mentioned now. You have your configuration manager console here. You want to administer it, you have to connect to your config manager database. But for you to connect to the config manager database, the component that facilitates that is a component called SMS provider. So you have your server, there are components that are inside the server that are performing different tasks. Another example is you have your software update feature of config manager installed. Now the software update feature, it integrates with your normal Microsoft W source. So your normal Microsoft W source actually will be the one that synchronizes with Microsoft website, to get all the downloads that are available. But the component on your configuration manager infrastructure that integrates with W source to do the synchronization, I think it's called is it W source sync or something like that, or CM sync? You can actually go let's go back to this one. I think it's called CM Sync, or let's go monitoring. We can bring up client system status. And then we can see what actually those components are. Config manager, service manager. And let's expand this. Yeah. And then I got all these components here. And all these components are doing different things. This is the one for the synchronization. SMS WSource Sync Manager. So whenever you say, hey, synchronize with Microsoft, WSource will actually be the one that will do the synchronization. But what will give that instruction to WSource is this component here. Just like we have our SMS provider that we mentioned that facilitates your connection to the database. So if you go here, somewhere here, there'll be SMS provider. SMS provider will be there somewhere. There you go. You've got SMS provider. And yeah, so you got different components that does different things. Now, all these components, they have log files and they have status messages. So those are two separate things. And by the way, when we're talking about the component, there are two types of components in Configuration Manager. There are service components and there are thread components. So you can see this is a service. So SMS Executive is a service. So this kind of SMS Executive, if I go under services in Configuration Manager, on the server, you actually see a service called SMS Executive Service. Yeah, that you can stop within, so if I bring up Services Console. Or maybe it wants, yep. So let's bring up the Services Console. Services, and then let me connect to the configure because I'm on a remote server now. So if I go connect to LB SCC CM1, and on this server, I expect to see a service called SMS Executive Service on this machine. And there we go, SMS Executive Service. And actually, if you go inside the Config Manager Service Manager, you see SMS Executive is a service. Another one that is a service is SMS Site Backup. So if I go under my Services console, I expect to see SMS Site Backup. So it's a service that's installed and running on the machine. It's a Configuration Manager component. But then here you can see some other components that are not services. They are threads within a service. Like Endpoint Protection Manager, it's a thread within this SMS Executive Service. So that means if I go here and I restart this SMS Executive Service, it will impact all these components that are threads under this service. So it will impact Endpoint Protection Manager, it will impact your Distribution Manager, your Dispooler, it will your Forest Discovery Manager, because all those ones, they are threads within that service. You understand the point? So if you go and restart this service from here, you restart all the components within that service. But what you can actually do from within Configuration Manager is you can go and restart the thread itself. So I can go and say, okay, there's no point disturbing, if I know that my Dispooler has a problem and I want to restart it, there's no point disturbing Endpoint Protection Manager component that's working fine. I can go from within here and restart the component that's having a problem. I can go and stop it and start it again without affecting the whole service and affecting all these other components. But you can only do that from within the Configuration Manager Service Manager, which you can find from Monitoring, System Status, Site Status, and you can go start here, Configuration Manager Service Manager, and then you can see all these components within Configuration Manager Service Manager. Any question regarding that before we move on? Abdul and Frank, any question?
Good.
Yeah. How about Abdul? Any question or anything that you want to add?
It's okay now.
You sure? You sure? You want to add anything? You want to? If you've got anything confusing?
No, it's not confusing. It's clear. No need to start the SMS executive service and
Yeah,
impact all
all these
your
other components.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just restart the thread that
exactly.
caused
So
the
if you're
problem.
having a problem and you're like, okay, maybe I need to restart, we're having a problem with forest discovery or system discovery. If you just go and restart the SMS executive service, you're impacting all these threads that are under that single service. So it's a single service without multiple threads under it. But you can't restart those threads from inside services. You can only restart the services themselves, the main services themselves. So for you to drill down to those threads, you have to use the configuration manager service manager. So here's where,
Okay.
yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any description about what these threads are doing or?
Yes. So that one, so I know on Microsoft website, they've got a description for every single component. But this is the kind of thing, because this is kind of like an introduction to all these things. So as we go on, for example, when we start talking about software updates, we'll get to a module that focuses on these three components a lot. Because those three components does almost everything that has to do with software updates in Configuration Manager. You get the point? So as we're talking about each particular, because from now on, after this beginning introduction that we're doing, from now on, the next phase that we'll be going into will be, okay, let's talk about client discovery. So there's components that does client discovery. So we'll be focusing heavily on this component: SMS, AD forest discovery, AD system discovery, AD user discovery, and focusing on just those components and what's going on. So when we start talking about inventory, we'll focus on the inventory data loader, inventory processor. You get the point. When we start talking about asset intelligence, we focus about things like license manager and stuff like that. So this is kind of like the introduction. So eventually we'll get to all these components one by one. Maybe not everything in this particular course, but we'll drill down on the most important ones. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So here's the thing, is that every single component keeps a log file. So whenever we go under our config manager infrastructure and we go under the install part under logs, all these log files that we're seeing, they relate to one component. So for example, we talked about the ones that handle software updates, WSOS configuration manager. So WSOS configuration manager, if I go under this and I go under logs and I go under this, you see WSOS sync manager here. SMS WSOS sync manager relates to this. And I can actually change it if I want. I can click on this one. If I go on login, I can see where this component is recording its log. I can increase the size of the log if I want. I can change the name of the log if I want, not recommended. I can disable the login for that component if I want. Again, not recommended. So that's where you manipulate like the login of each individual component. Now we said we've got, so let's go back here. We said we've got log messages, we've got status messages. So the main difference is, who wants to give that a go? Let somebody else give it a go. So difference, so what do you think the difference should be between log messages and status messages? Anyone? Steven, I got Andrew online also. So Steven, Andrew, what do you think would be the difference between status messages and log messages? You have to unmute yourself. You're muted. Anyone? So if I minimize this and I go back to config manager, this one. So, okay, if I go under component status here, and I can see all the components here again. So let's say I take the WSOS one, for example, SMS WSOS sync manager. If I click on it, I can go show messages and show me all messages there. So whenever I say show messages, show me all messages here, I'm actually seeing this thing, not log messages, I'm seeing status messages. So status messages are kind of like an overview. So for example, a component may perform 100 actions and one main action. So maybe I say synchronize with Microsoft website, synchronize the software update metadata. So when it does that synchronization, there's a lot of log message entries that you get for that component. But at the end of that synchronization, it gives me a single status message that says synchronization completed. So that's the difference, is that log messages go in more details, whereas status messages are more like, here's an overview, action completed, action failed. If you want to drill down to see exactly what's going on, you have to look at the log messages. But for example, let's see this one. If I say, show me all the status messages from this component, look at, these are all the status messages. I can see synchronization done, synchronization in progress, synchronization started, and that's it. But if I go under the log file for that component, it will now show me everything in fine details between those status messages. So status messages are kind of like, if you just want to see an overview, is this component having an error, for example? You can see that from within status messages. But then if you now want to drill down and do more troubleshooting, you have to go look for example, you can go on the config manager, service manager again, to look for that component, look for where it's logging its messages, and then go look in that log message to drill down into what's going on with that component. So is that clear, or does anyone have any questions, any additions, anything to add to that? Yep. Frank, Abdul, Steven, Andy.
Clear for me.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So that, yeah, so we got that one. So the other thing that I want to, the module, actually not the module mentioned, is the difference between this site status here and this component status here. Again, like you said, when you have a config manager server, it has components inside it that is doing all the tasks that you want. So you can see the general overview of the status under component status. But if I go under site status here, so this one may actually look to you like, actually what's going on here? Like, if you look at this interface, this one is mainly dealing with disk space, not necessarily with more details about this server. It's mainly dealing with the disk space on this server. So it's saying, oh, it's a distribution point. It's got a total of this, and it's talking about the free disk percentage. So that's what this one is mainly showing you. So that's why this one is telling me, hey, hold on, you've got 8% free on this disk. And then you can see all the others are showing as LD. This one I've got 97% free disk space and so. So whenever you're seeing site status, it's not really talking about what exactly the server is doing itself. It's mainly giving you an overview of the disk space and the different roles and the disk space. And the way to change the way this one operates is if you go under administration, and if you go on the, I think on the site here, and if you select the site, you can see status summarizers here. And under status summarizer, I can pick site system status summarizer. This one is for the components, this one is for the site. The site one deals mainly with disk space. This one deals mainly with the activities of that component. So if I go edit the one for the site status, for example, you can see the threshold is telling me, it's talking about disk space. It's talking about warning if you have this KB left, critical if you have this amount of disk space left. That's all this one is giving me. So just take note of that whenever you start seeing. So under site status and you start seeing like red, know that that's talking about disk space. If I go under component status, this is not just telling me about disk space, it's telling me about the activities of the component itself. This is telling me about warnings and information messages and error messages of this component itself. And the way that this one works, this is something that you will understand. So don't worry if you don't understand everything now, is that under component status, I can configure it such that if you have 1,000 warnings, give me an error message. If you have, so there's information message, there's warning message, there's error message. If you have 1,000 information messages, give me a warning. You may want to do that, let's say, maybe a component is not supposed to be, sending that much of a message, and all of a sudden it's sending like massive amount of log messages, it may be an indication that something is wrong with that component. So maybe it keeps retrying something over and over again and it's having lots of informational messages. So what you can do is you can edit that on that component again. So remember, site status is giving you more of disk space. This one is giving you more of the activity of the component itself. And you can edit that on the site here under status summarizers, and you can select your component status. And I can say, hey, on the threshold, I can say, if you have 2000 warnings and 5,000 critical, 5,000 critical, okay, yeah, 5,000 is critical, 2,000 is warning, and that's information message. So if this component has 2,000 informational message, it will give me a warning. If it has 5,000 informational message, it will give me a critical alert. So just note that, because the message is showing you under the component status that we saw, if it's showing you error there, does not necessarily mean that it's error. It could just be normal information messages, but there's too much of them. So if you want to edit that, you can edit that from here. And you can say, okay, I don't want you to give me a warning message if the information message is only 2,000. I want you to make it 20,000, and you can configure that from here. So is that clear at all? Any question regarding that? Any question at all regarding that? And I think finally, like for this module, is the configuration manager toolkit. So which is a download that you can download from Microsoft's website. And you download it from Microsoft website, and it can give you more troubleshooting features for configuration manager. So I'm not sure if I have it installed on this machine, but for example, let's see. Yeah, so I don't have it installed on this machine. So what I can do is I can go to Microsoft website and I can download and it's something that's recommended to have. So I can download the latest toolkit. And when I install the toolkit, it gives me a lot of, so it has server-based tools and it has client-based tools. And then it can give me more troubleshooting capabilities. So for example, I can use the distribution point job manager, which we'll see later when we talk about content management. So distribution job manager can show me when I'm distributing jobs to clients, what the order of distribution is, which one will be distributed next, any distribution jobs that are in the queue. I can stop them, I can start them, I can move one above another, and all that kind of stuff. I can use this one to view the content of my, so for example, if you go under your distribution point and you see the folder, you may not be able to understand exactly which package is what. But with Content Library Explorer, you can understand it, kind of makes it more user-friendly for you to understand what's in your content library. And then this one, which is really useful tool if you want to migrate your distribution point or your content library from one volume to another. Let's say the disk space is getting filled up on one volume. You want to move it to another volume, then you can use your content library transfer to move it. Because you can't just go and just do copy and paste. That won't work. There's a lot more configuration that needs to happen after that. But content library transfer will do all that for you. So that's for the size. And this one that we'll be using when we get there, we'll talk about this metering summarization tools. So some data that come from your client are not actually presented to you in your report until they are summarized. So, and usually summarization happens according to a scheduled task. So usually it's midnight, maybe by default, and you can configure it if you want. But what this one can do is that it gives you the ability to go and run that summarization job immediately so that you don't have to wait till the scheduled time to get the information that your clients have reported. And then you have the client-based tools that can help you if you're troubleshooting the policy on a client machine, what deployment is currently being deployed to that client machine and all that stuff. So I think that's probably where we stop today. But before we stop, a little bit of trivia and question for us. So I guess the main one is you want your service desk to use Powershell So who wants to go for that? So that's where we'll end today. So you want your service desk to be able to use PowerShell to administer your config manager infrastructure. I must add this remotely. So who wants to go for that? Frank, you want to give it a go?
Yeah, they need to import the modules.
Import the modules, okay. So is that the first thing that they will need to do? Where will they get the module from?
They're going to have to set up a PS session, and then they're going to have to download it from the library from Microsoft. Make sure they install the console.
Ah, good one. Excellent. So the very first thing they need to do is they need to install the console. And what's the reason why they need to install the console?
That's where the commandlet library is.
Yep, good one. Excellent. The command library is included. What other reason do they need to install the console? Abdul, you want to go for that? So the first thing they need to do is they need to install the console. The commanded library is there, but what's the other reason?
I think they will use this console to connect to the site server. Okay.
Yep.
And during this, the site, I think it will be registered in their machine registry.
Good one. Excellent. So registers needed registry key. Yeah. Excellent. So after they do that, what do they do next? So after they've installed the console, they've connected to the site server, it's registered all the key. What else do they need to do?
You can import the module.
Excellent. Yep. After that.
No, you have to start the console.
Yep. Good. We'll start the console. Yeah.
Okay. And import the module.
Yep.
And connect to the right to the PS driver.
Excellent. That's the important one. Excellent. And that way they will be able to administer it directly from there, remotely without having to go there. So the other question is just a quick one because we made mention of it today. Which log? Hello, Frank.
I gotta go. I'll see you guys.
Okay, no, yeah, no problems. We'll see you. I was going to throw a question at you, but it's all right. You escaped this time, so it's all right. Okay, so yeah, so final question. Which log will you look at to troubleshoot config manager console connection issues? So which log will you look at to troubleshoot that? Abdul, you again, because you've been around how to. So which log will you look at? You want to troubleshoot. So people are like, I can connect to the config manager console. I have the right permission.
Yeah, I think it is SMS provider log class.
Excellent. Excellent. The SMS provider log. Excellent. Okay. So I think that's it for today. I think next week, I think the main things that we'll be going into is we start going into. So if I actually let me bring my textbook up here. So I mean, this is the official Microsoft stuff. But I think from next week we're going into module 2. So we finished everything that has to do with module 1. finished everything that has to do with module 1. So we're going into module 2, which is discovering and organizing resources from next week. So now we start talking about, we have a config manager infrastructure. We know how to connect to it if we want to administer it. We know basic things about what to look for when we start troubleshooting, things like status messages and log messages, and how do we get clients into this infrastructure? What options are available to us? Depending on our environment, what are the options that are available to us that we can use to get clients into our infrastructure so then we can start managing them. So that's mainly what we'll be talking about next week, discovering and organizing resources in Config Manager. And I'll recommend that we have Team Viewer installed on our machines because I'll probably be giving access to my server here so that we can do some tasks together. And so people can connect to my lab here and then we can do some tasks. Okay, any questions, any comments for today? Abdul, anything useful at all? Was it useful at all?
Yeah, can you go back to that website which you download the tools?
Sorry, which one is that?
Troubleshooting.
Oh, sorry, I'll need to mute. Yep. Sorry.
Hello?
Hello, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the last website that you said to download some
okay,
tools
this
for
one.
saving
This
time.
one. Okay, yeah, this one. The toolkit. So let me post that in the chat window also. So
The manager.
yeah.
Manager tool.
So it's called the Configuration Manager Toolkit. So it contains extra tools that you can use, and we'll be using this also in this whole module. I know that we'll use this when we get to talking about inventory. So this one is very useful when you're troubleshooting and distribution. For example, sometimes I distribute and some form of content to distribution point, and then I realize I want to test something on my local site, but SCCM is distributing this to this remote site first, and I'm like, I want you to distribute to this server first right now. So one way that I can achieve that is I can bring up the DP Job Manager and then right click. So basically it shows you like all the ongoing distributions, and I can right click and say, hey, move this one to the top. Whenever there's any thread that's available for distribution, which is the package transfer manager, whenever any thread is available for distribution, I want you to use that thread to distribute this content to this distribution point. So I can do that from using distribution job manager. I can use this to evaluate my collection, for example, saying what exactly have been deployed to this collection, you know. Sort of like, so there are some tasks there are some administrative tasks that we do that way, that depending on what you're doing, you can do them better with one tool or another. So that's like kind of like, so this one provides you like an easier way to, so it's not as if you can't do some of these things, but you probably have to go through a lot of oops and try to do a lot of customizations to do that. So they've just provided you a tool that can help you to do this one. Content library transfer, again, if you've got, let's say, in this age when we've got virtual servers, yeah, you can just expand the disk. But let's say you've got a physical server that's a distribution point, and all of a sudden you've got a volume that's run out of disk space, and you've put in new disk space and created a new volume. But now you can also still extend the volume. You can extend volumes across this. But if you want to say, okay, I don't want to extend volumes across this, what I want to do is move this content library from this volume, move it to this new volume that I've just created. You can do that manually. Copy and paste won't work, but you can use this tool and it will save you a lot of effort with that. And same thing when you're troubleshooting for client. Although I hardly use the client troubleshooting tool, apart from the one for viewing log files, but I would say the server ones have been really useful for me. So yeah, so that's what we'll be discussing next week. So let's try to, whatever you're using, videos, CPT Nugget, Pluralsight, textbook, anything. I personally prefer using the official Microsoft books and stuff like that. So whatever you're using, try to read on discovering and organizing resources in Configuration Manager, how you discover resources and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll carry on from there next week. Nice hanging out with you guys today. And we'll see you next week again, if possible. And for those that are doing MCS A, MCS E, we'll start a 7410 Hangout series again tomorrow. So, but that's for beginners mainly. It does mention CM trace. So the CM trace, yeah. So configuration manager trace log viewer. So that's the configuration. They've mentioned it as a client-based tool, but it's used for both server or client. So anything that's with configuration manager log file, you want to use CM trace. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, guys. So have a wonderful evening. Don't want to keep you that long. We'll see you again next week if you're just studying for config manager. If you're studying for MCSA, if possible, we'll see you tomorrow. And again, all these hangouts are recorded, so you can always view them later.